Welcome to the No Bullshit Show, where we talk about a bunch of random business topics, try to add some insight to it. We both come from very different backgrounds. Atsushi Yasuda comes from 30 years in the industry. I come from, obviously, less because I'm younger. But what we like to do is just talk about like a complete no bullshit, no bells and whistles, just have a straight-on conversation about latest articles and news and our advice and tips and tricks. Today, we're going to be talking about an HBR article that has been kind of circulating the internet on the average age of a successful startup founder is 45. Despite all the news articles out there that are talking about, young founders and Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and how they started multi-billion-dollar companies. But I found this particularly interesting.
And it's appropriate, given our age difference.
Exactly, because I know from my perspective, I always get from PR, news, and all this bullshit that's out there. Like, you always think, like, oh, the LinkedIn founder was, like, in his, early 30s?
I don't know.
Steve Jobs was, like, in his 20s. Bill Gates was in his 20s.
They all dropped out of college, right?
Yeah, right? It's just this whole stigma. So that's interesting. Do you have any insights on it?
No, you know what? It is interesting because my belief has always been founders, startups, especially in tech, are young guys that, are stereotypically drop out of, the Ivy League schools to go start their business, and they're wildly successful. Mm-hmm. But I think, just given the numbers of startups every year, and quite frankly, the number of startups that fail, you should have to start to kind of dissect that, right? And I think this is an interesting topic.
That'd be an interesting statistic on some research on figuring out what's the average age of startups that actually fail.
I don't know. I mean, this is a whole topic, right?
Yeah.
Like ageism, is there a value? I believe, I have certain theories around the value of maturity and experience in starting a company. And I think that's kind of what the HBR article goes into. But at the same time, I also know I'm limited in terms of my take on current technologies, current trends.
Yeah.
So as the old guy, right? So I don't know.
Let me ask you this then. Did you think that the average age was going to be so
low? Younger, right?
You thought it was younger?
Yeah.
Right? I thought it was younger too. I thought I was in like 25 or something like that. I thought I was fucking behind. Jesus Christ.
No, I don't know, like, as I'm, based on my own experience, it is, like, I can understand there's a level of energy that comes from being, in your early 20s. You get unlimited amount of energy, and you can go and go and go. And so I think that's certainly an ingredient for success, especially when you're trying to, build out a business. But also, you're limited by your kind of experience. You're basing decisions based on your body of knowledge, what you have inside your brain. Yeah. So, the more you have, I would think that you'd make better or more informed decisions.
Yeah.
So that's where I think the benefit of being older. But I don't know. The trade-off for me is like, no, I don't have the same energy I did, when I was 20.
Yeah.
So I accept that as, as a constraint or my own limitation. Right?
But then there's that element of like working smarter versus working harder. Like, I get that.
I think that's just an excuse, right?
Yeah, but that's literally what it is, because it's like, yes, like, there's this line in here that I was like, whoa, like, it's pretty crazy. Kudos to whoever wrote this. I'll figure it out later. But, where was it? In light of this evidence, why do some VCs persist in betting on young founders? We cannot definitively answer this question with the data at our disposal, but we believe that two mechanisms could be at play. First, many VCs may operate under mistaken belief that youth is the elixir of successful entrepreneurship. In other words, VCs are simply wrong. And like I fully agree with that, in a sense of, I don't even think it's VCs, but I think it's just the entire planet. Because a number of, like, when I go talk to, like, high schools or when I go talk to universities, and the number of guys that actually want to get into entrepreneurship, where they have zero work experience whatsoever, and I asked them, I was like, why the hell did you even consider running this startup? And it's like, it could be a great idea, it could be a bad idea, and, if they get lucky, one in whatever, 100 actually succeed. But what threw me off was it was literally all the PR and all the articles that they read, and the internet is just inundated with successful startups, and it's a fucking story to tell, right? All these news articles are just looking for fucking stories to tell around. They're not going to talk about some, no offense, some like 50-year-old guy who just like running a successful donut shop around the corner. What they're going to talk about is like the young entrepreneur that started off with some idea or came from absolutely nothing and became the largest fucking company on the planet.
Yeah.
And that really scares me for the next generation of people or the next generation of entrepreneurs, because you're getting to a point where they're just like they're gonna start a business without knowing what the hell to do.
But I think there's some benefit to that, right? Yeah. You don't come into it with a level of skepticism, right? Like, we talk about like throughout my own career, it's like you get knocked down a peg or two, and you start to learn. And I have to say, quite frankly, the exuberance kind of gets tempered based on the realities of working, within a corporate environment. So, I think for youth and for entrepreneurs that are in their 20s, coming to the table with a blank piece of paper or without that preconceived kind of skepticism, I think is healthy, right? To a certain point.
Yeah.
So that kind of, and it's that level of creativity that you get because you're not encumbered by that kind of skepticism. So you're more free to think creatively. And then that kind of is the impetus for the idea, the concept of a startup. I think the challenge becomes, talking about it before in terms of how do you take the concept through to execution to get to go to market and to build it out. I think that's where there's certain limitations that come into play, especially if you don't have that level of experience, right?
Yeah, I think what's interesting is you talked about this in a previous podcast where the biggest problem or the biggest challenge for startups in scaling is the own mental limitations of the founders themselves.
Yeah.
And what are your thoughts? So what's interesting is that almost plays into this particular article in a sense that, look, all these younger founders are starting all these businesses, but they're not, a good percentage of them are not successful. And it's probably because they're, I don't know if it's stubbornness or if it's overconfidence. And because I know I had it when I first started my first business, was I had this crazy overconfidence, I can go sell, I can do this, I can do that. When in reality, I'm not the fucking greatest at selling. I'm amazing at educating, but I'm absolutely terrible at selling.
Yeah.
So it just got to a point where,
But you approached it. So let me stop you here. With that, the lack of understanding or experience, you just forged ahead.
Yeah.
You were fearless in going through that, and I think that's a healthy characteristic to have when you're trying to get something off the ground.
Yeah.
I think this is where, then you make the transition to, okay, we've proven this out. Man, this is pretty exciting. Now, how do we take it from where we are today to 2x, 3x?
Yeah.
That's where you start getting into really the challenges and limitations based on your experience. And I think this is where, you find a mentor, the right mentor. You hear startups really kind of embracing the concepts around advisory boards, because that just opens up the wealth of knowledge that you can tap into to help grow. But I think, I'm almost arguing both sides, because I think at the beginning, the creativity of, I'm going to say the youth, is very healthy.
Yeah.
Because you can problem solve very differently than somebody who's kind of sits there and says, yeah, I've been there, done that, that's never going to work. Right? I think you get into that level of skepticism over time. But with being a young guy, I think it's healthy. I think it's really, you don't want to be encumbered by that kind of constraint, right? But I think it's a reality. It's a business.
Yeah.
So you have, how do you grow it, right?
Yeah.
So,
I think one of the interesting things coming out of this article was, I 100% agree with you that as youth, you can, the capabilities of creativity, the limits, there are no limits to, how you can innovate, because the youth, think in wildly different ways. We try to figure out ways that how, we could use technology to our advantage to solve different particular business problems, whatever. We're just more well versed in automation and all those different elements. But there is that fine balance of having the more experienced mentor. But what I find coming out of this is like, why is it that 45 as an age, let's say you have a good 15 years of experience under your belt in business, you've seen what works, seen what hasn't worked. Why do you think we're in that phase right now of 45 being that age of having a successful startup?
I don't know, because you think at 45, you're just you've almost lived your entire life with all of the kind of technologies that are available, right?
Yeah.
I think about it because, like I grew up within an environment where, it was still black and white TVs. You actually had to stand up off your couch, turn the channel, and shit like that. But
we're lazy. We're lazy as a millennial generation.
But at 45, you've your kind of early years have probably been with embracing some level of technology, right? Whether it's Nintendo 64 or whatever. And so you've kind of lived that whole life. And so that's your existence. Mm-hmm. That's to your core. So I think there's an element of that where that's the world you've lived in. Mm-hmm. And you don't know anything else.
So I actually missed this part. Like, the percentage of founders by age group, and they've broken it down by all startups and highest growth startups. 29 and younger, the highest growth startups are almost half of all startups. But in the 45 age group, successful startups are like high growth startups are far surpassing all startups. And that's that kind of blows my mind, right? In a sense of maybe at that age, because I don't know, I'm not there yet. But I think at that age, it's like you are in that fine line between you understand technology, and it doesn't even have to be technology. You just understand. I think when you're in business, I think one of the biggest things you learn is how to grow, how to manage people, how to delegate. Whereas if you're just out of school and you're by yourself, you're studying by yourself, you don't know like really how to grow a business or like what you should be doing, what you shouldn't be doing. But it's the business element of everything you learn. You can come out of the best business school in the world and you still won't learn that.
It's all theory, right?
Yeah.
Or predominantly theory.
Exactly. Yeah. So like when you're 29 and younger, you have, very little business experience, whether or not you're even in a junior position, right? But I think that's the kicker. Yeah.
I think you just have a collection of skills at that age that's really complementary trying to build a business. Yeah. I think that's really what it is. You're still very creative and innovative. You're still, in tune with the technologies and tools, but you also have the maturity to know, when you need to temper your enthusiasm, when you should go, all in. I think you have a beautiful kind of set of skills that are truly complementary to, if that's your aspiration.
Yeah. So let's discuss this. Do we feel that it's better to start a business in your 20s and be creative, be innovative, and just shoot the shit while you have very little dependency, you don't have like whatever kids or whatever? Or do we feel it's easier or better to start a business at 45, 40s, maybe in your 40s? What are your thoughts on that?
I say yes.
Yes to what?
Yes to both.
Okay.
If the question is it better to start a business when you're 20 versus 40? I would say yes, it's better because, again, it comes back to you have this ultimate in creativity. You don't have obligations, right? And what's the worst case? You go live, move back in with your folks, right? But if it's about, what's the, based on the article, what's the best age range to build, to not just start, but to build the business? I would say in your 40s. Because hopefully you've kind of learned all these wonderful lessons over the last 20 years. You can apply them. You have enough experience to know what your passion is in terms of a business. So you don't have to kind of figure that out. And you have the experience, the work experience, to hopefully make the right decisions to build the business. So yes, if you're a 20-year-old guy looking to build a business, that'd be great. I think there's little risk to that. Try it. You'll learn tons. But if it's now at 40, you're probably going to have, obligations, financial obligations. There's more risk in terms of your reliance or
your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's more riding on your success, but you also have more tools at your disposal to be able to grow it. So yes, to start, 20 to start, maybe 40 to build, something like that.
So I'm gonna go a different route.
Okay.
My piece of advice is, in your 20s, you should have like a ton of ideas, right? You're young, you're ambitious, you see all these problems, you want to solve it. So I'm not saying squash the number of ideas that you have, but I think it's you should be strategic in your own route on which one to actually pursue, right? And I think the only way to really go about that is, I think one of the big problems that millennials have right now is they stick to this circle of millennials, right? And I say this from experience because I went through the past. I went through that where I only got ideas and advice from my peers, my friends, my colleagues who are all in the same age group.
Yeah.
But what I really needed in life, hence why the fuck I'm doing this with you right now, is having that level of expertise from an older senior executive who's been through the shitter.
Thanks.
Who has been through the shitter, who's been through success, has overcome a lot of those obstacles, and knows how to grow a business.
You don't. As a 20-year-old, you're not going to sit there and say, "Man, I'm not going to take advice from the dad," right? Like, but that's the mindset, and so it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, but that's what you need, though. That's what millennials fucking need.
You need it, but that doesn't mean it's like. As a teenager, you're going to go and you're going to do shit.
Yeah.
But you have to do it in order to learn from it.
Yes, but there's also the element of not going into it completely blind, right? So it's that.
But you know it because you're not 20. But at 20, I bet you weren't thinking the same thing. You said, shit, I know everything. I know how to solve the world problems. I'm just going to go do it. I could do it by myself.
Yeah.
That's probably the attitude you had when you were 20.
Oh, absolutely. But I'm saying that should not be the attitude.
But you can't say that, and you can't give the advice.
Yeah.
But as a 20-year-old, maybe listening to this, they're saying, like, what are these guys talking about? They're like, they're smoking crack.
No, because so I just don't want people to fall. I don't want other millennials to fall into the same mistake that I went through. So you hear me out though. What I'm trying to say here is, as a millennial, if you have an idea that you're really truly passionate about and you feel like it's going to solve the world problems, don't rule out, figure out from take advice from your peers, take advice from get feedback from your peers in that same age group, but don't neglect and don't be so stubborn to the point where you're not taking advice and feedback from the older, more experienced executive level people. Because then those are the guys who are going to tell you, your friends might tell you, I think it's a great product or service that you're trying to run, extremely smart, blah, 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 and they'll try to support you, but they'll have that natural bias that they're your friends. But from an executive perspective, if you get their piece of advice, if I came to you with an idea, you'd be looking at it from a holistic, business point of view, oh man, is this really, a scalable product or service? What's the business model? Maybe we should try this, maybe we should try that. And, if you completely squash my idea, then that's my choice to make on whether or not I want to prove you wrong.
Right.
Or if I want to, I want to take your advice and say, okay, maybe I should kind of rethink how I want to go about this. I think any business could be successful to a certain extent. If a guy could sell a fucking pet rock on Kijiji for $100 a pop and become a millionaire in 24 hours, then by all means. But
I think you hit it, is that it's not that you're looking for somebody to tell you yes, no. I think the ideal circumstance would be to have somebody just provide you with additional information. More information to help make a better decision or more informed decision. I think that's the key. So whether you're 20 or 40 or 60, if you're open enough to have conversations about your concepts, your ideas, and so on, you're going to collect more information. You're going to collect more data. So I think that's really helpful. So as a 20-year-old, if you can get past the bias of, what is this gray-haired guy he's going to know about a technology, he can help you in terms of, it's a different point of view. It's more than that. It's no more than that, right? I'm not ever going to be in a position to say, Andrew, that concept sucks. You shouldn't do it. That wouldn't never be my role as your advisor or as your mentor or your coach. It would simply be asking questions so that you're helping you think through the challenge itself. And I can certainly say, hey, based on my experience, these are the things that happened, that may be relevant for you. But at the end of the day, it's your choice, right? Because who am I to say? I'm no Bill Gates, right? So
what's crazy is that this entire conversation is almost paradoxical to this article, because this article in itself is saying that the VCs are investing in younger startup founders because that's what they believe,
correct,
based on their own circle of knowledge. That's what they should be investing in, and that's what's going to be the next, that's what's going to make me 5x on my money or 10x on my money. But in reality, this is why you need to start thinking outside of, the internet in itself is almost like a closed loop of information, which kind of almost sucks, because then that's whatever.
Yeah, it's almost like you live in a curated world, right?
Yeah.
So based on your circle of friends and your network of peers and the business context, it's all the information that you absorb or that you get is curated based on that constraint, right? So, to make a decision, you just have limited number of variables, right? The more variables you can add, the better decision you're going to make.
Exactly.
I think that's really, to the point of the VCs. I think that's just what, naturally they're having the same conversation with probably a bunch of 20-year-olds, trying to get some, seed round or, Series A and so on. Yeah. So, but that's just their purview of the world. That's what they've been exposed to. I would love to kind of think that you're not limited by your age to go and find a VC that's interested in your concept, right? Yeah. It doesn't matter how old the founder is.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
I don't know. We're kind of going all around it.
Yeah. But I think the biggest thing that we can learn out of this, and that we could tell whoever's watching this, is don't put your ego aside.
Yeah.
First off, and the second thing is open up the number of variables, like you said. Yeah. Not only getting perspectives from your peers, but getting perspectives from business leaders, executives, board people, whatever it may be. An idea is an idea. There's a reason why the terminology proof of concept exists, because you need to prove out your concept. But I think the third thing I can say is know your limitations, right? Budget yourself to a point where you're not going to starve yourself to fucking death, right? And right.
That's the other story, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how many times you heard a founder say, "Yeah, I lived in the basement of my parents' house eating craft dinner or Ichiban," right? That seems to be this rite of passage to be, a founder of a successful startup. I don't think that's reality, right? I think that's
what news tells us.
Yes.
That's the fucking publications and journalists being
but that's the sizzle.
I need something interesting to write about. But let's face it, everything behind the fucking scenes is not reality, right? It's like basing your entire life off a movie. It's not the same damn thing, right? It's let's be real with our lives, and maybe maybe that's the thing that the 45-year-old age group really understands is life is not a movie.
Good one.
Right? And life is not about what we read in the news and the fake news and what's right and what's wrong and people's opinions. It's about legitimately doing it based on the experience that you already have, because you know firsthand that's what to do, what not to do in that particular niche of whatever business you're in. And when you start up your own consultancy, you start up your own whatever dry cleaner, whatever it may be, you know exactly what you should be doing to be a high growth startup. Hence the charts and all that. That's what I'm thinking. That's all I gotta say. You have any last words?
No, it is an interesting conversation to have, though. It was enlightening. I read the HBR article and I'm intrigued by the information.
Does it give you a little bit of hope?
Yeah. it just means that I'm not that far, down the path. I'm not foot in the grave quite yet.
Yeah. Right. So. The KFC guy started at what, 60, 65? Jeez.
I'm right there.
I didn't know that. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. Till next time. Peace out.